welcome to another episode of Board Games and Stuff. It's no surprise that in this episode I'm going to be taking a look at a game called Legends of Andor. Now, Legends of Andor is put out by Fantasy Flight Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, but it's a cooperative game, so you could technically play it solo. It retails for around $50, and its suggested age is 14, but I've been able to play it with my daughter who's 8, and it is co-op, so with a little bit of help, she did just fine. Now, it is a fantasy-themed game, and I didn't really know much about this game when it came out, other than it's a fantasy-themed co-op game and a few images that I seen on the internet about the game. So I went ahead and picked it up kind of blindly, not sure what to expect. I was a little worried that perhaps with having Defenders of the Realm, which is another fantasy-themed cooperative game, that the two might clash a little bit, and I'd be battling back and forth on which one was going to get to the table. But this game definitely plays vastly different, which you're going to see in a little bit when we get into that. One thing I want to mention before I start showing you things is that this game is designed by Michael Menzel. Now, a lot of you probably recognize that name because he is a very famous well, he could be a famous designer soon. Very famous board game artist. In fact, if you go on Board Game Geek and look at his database, he has over 170 credits to his name. Some of his most famous ones, well, some of the ones that I know that I like and own is Stone Age, Thebes, Pillars of the Earth. He's also done the new Settlers of Catan version. He's done some stuff for Dominion, Shogun, Year of the Dragon. You just got to go on if you're interested and you don't know his work. Go on. He's really one of my favorite board game artists, and this is his very first design. So he did the artwork and the design of this game, which I think is really cool. So let me go ahead and get into it. I got to preface this and say that it's kind of a strange game to explain kind of how it plays and everything, because the way the game works is it's a quest system. So you're going to be story-driven quest. You're going to be kind of playing through these quests, and aspects of the game won't come into play in every quest. So it's not like every quest is going to be played exactly the same. But I'll show you the basic mechanics that are played through every quest, and then we'll talk a little bit about the differences in the quest, and then probably more than that too. So let's just get right into it. Here you can see the beautiful board and artwork for the game. It's just stunning detail, and there's just a lot going on in the photo. You can zoom in and you can see some really cool details of certain areas, like little farms and just people standing everywhere. It really comes to life. Here's the other side of the board. It's not played based on players. This board actually changes based on which quest that you're going to be playing during the game. I've never really seen this done before, where the two sides of the board are totally separate like this and come into play. This is just awesome. Before I move on, one thing that I have to talk about is the fact that this game only comes with a reference sheet and then a quick start rules booklet that is only 4 pages long. The first quest that you're going to be playing is considered the introductory quest, and it walks you through step by step kind of how that you're going to set the game board up, as you can see here. The quick start rulebook is only 4 pages. There is a rules reference that comes with the game. As you can see here, mine's a little bent out of shape. I took it to work with me one day in my work bag. Pretty much any questions that you're going to have that pop up in the game, you're going to be able to find in this sheet. As players, you're going to have your choice between 4 different characters. You're going to have the dwarf and the wizard, as well as the fighter and the ranger. If you flip the character sheets over, it's actually the exact same character, but with a female depiction. And the game even comes with playing pieces, depending on if you're the male or female version of your character. Their special abilities are still the same whether you're a male or female, as well as all their starting abilities. Okay, so here is what the game board looks like after the introductory game setup. Now keep in mind, at this point, you have no idea how to play the game. The game is going to teach you how to play as you're progressing through the first introductory storyline. These blue tokens are only going to be used in the introductory version of the game. Again, these rules are not in the quick start rules, such as the rules for fog. They're on the tokens, and you will read how the fog tokens work when you move into their space, as well as how it works when you enter a space with gold, how the merchant works, and how wells work when you enter their spaces as well. Huh, I said well. This is the legend marker and the legend track. This track really is going to determine the timing mechanics of the game and how long the game is going to last. You're told to just put your token on space A and nothing more. It goes all the way up to the last space, which is N. You'll put a token of each player color in the sunrise box, which we'll get to here in just a second. Alright, taking a quick look at a character sheet here. Everyone is going to start with 1 strength point, and everyone's going to put one of their discs on starting willpower of 7. There are spaces on here where you can put items as well as coins, but there's nothing that you have to worry about this early in the game. And in fact, you don't even know how combat works at this point. Each character does have a special ability you should check out at the beginning of the game, as well as a rank. The rank number will determine orders of certain things throughout the quest of who might go first in certain situations based on their rank. And each ability is different for each character. Alright, jumping back up here to the sunrise box, I'm still not going to completely explain what everything in there means, but I will explain how movement and actions, some actions work for the heroes. Every time a hero moves 1 space, they're going to move their marker 1 hour on the time track. So if a hero moves 4 spaces on their turn, that's 4 hours of movement that they took to move there. Heroes have 7 hours that they can move freely during the course of a day, and then they can exhaust willpower points to move an additional 3 hours, or use an additional 3 hours of the day, except it costs -2 to your willpower for every one of those hours that you go over. Apparently I have a new person sitting in my chair here that wants to do the video reviews from now on. Gandalf the Grey. Psst, psst. Gandalf. Psst, psst, psst. You hungry? Want to play a game? Okay, apparently my neighbors must know every time that I'm going to shoot one of these videos or that we have to record the podcast over at my house, because they seem to always let their dogs outside and then leave them there to bark their heads off and not let them back inside. And it snowed last night, so there's a lot of snow on the ground and they're kind of barking their heads off. So I do apologize if you hear dogs barking in the background. But I've stopped several times and waited for them, and 20 minutes go by and they're still out there barking. So moving along with the game here, I wanted to talk about these. Now these guys really are the meat and potatoes of the game. These are the legend cards. And when you're going to start with Legend 1, that's the introductory game, and you're going to draw the top card. The backs of these cards have all the story on the cards and what you're going to do in your quest. I will say that I'm going to have to spoil a little bit about how the first introductory quest works in order for me to explain the game and see if it's something you're going to be interested in. So let's move on again, and we'll take a closer look at the first one of these legend cards that you're going to be drawing. Okay, so before you start a quest, or legend, as I'll keep referring to it from here on out, you're always going to look at legend card A1. And that's the first one that you're going to look at. And the bottom of that card explains to you what cards you're going to be putting in that legend deck, making sure you have them all there and what order they're going to come in. There may also be some extra cards, such as the team battle card and end of battle card, that you'll set to the side and not actually put them in the stack of the legend card. Then we'll be flipping it over. So the back side of the card will have some story, and usually it will tell you what you're going to be doing during the quest. I'm going to skip over the story a little bit to save those spoilers, but you can see here that it tells you the things that you need to do at the beginning of the game. At least one hero must uncover a fog token, at least one hero must buy a strength point from the merchant, a hero must empty the well, and a hero must enter the castle. Now if you remember the blue tokens, those tokens tell you how you empty the well, how you go to the merchant, and how you're going to reveal a fog token. So this first part of the scenario is making you go to those areas and learn those objectives. Alright, some of the cards will say at the bottom that you need to continue reading and going on to the next legend card. So legend A has a second card to it, and this will tell you that you also need to take that legend card, look at it, and read the back as well. Okay, so there's a couple more rules listed that tells you about the river, and then it gets on to how the legend, this letter of the legend will end. And one of these things has to happen. Either the hero must end his movement on the castle space, or all heroes must have moved their time marker to space 7 or ended their day early. Okay, so looking back at that time track, for this instance, they are not letting you use 8, 9, or 10 hours. This has to be completed before all heroes end up reaching the 7th hour. If a hero ends his day early, which he can do pretty much at any time, the first hero that does that goes back to this rooster box in the sunrise box, and that determines which hero will go first on the next turn, the next day, morning, and also the first hero that uses all his hours and has to go back there will be the first player to go the next day. Jumping back to the legend card here, it tells you at the bottom that you must complete all 4 of these objects in a single day or you'll lose the quest or the legend. Also, once it's done, it tells you that you now need to go back and read step 4 in the quick start rules book. Okay, so we'll take a quick look here at the fog tokens, the merchant, and the wells. Okay, so this explains how fog tokens work. When a hero enters a space with a fog token, you must immediately end your movement and you must reveal the fog token. The backside of the fog tokens will have different things on them, such as just take a gold or gain 2 willpower points. Later on, when I show you the fog tokens, some of them will actually have monsters inside the fog that get revealed when you land on that space. Okay, so when a player lands on one of the spaces on the board indicated by a merchant icon, there's 3 different spaces like this, he can perform merchant actions. Right now at the beginning of the game, all you can do is buy a strength point. So this is how you're going to increase the strength of your character, which we'll talk about what you use that for a little bit later. And it costs 2 gold. Unless you are the dwarf, and if he actually goes to the dwarf mine merchant, he can do it for only 1 gold. The wells work by a hero landing on the well, they're able to just immediately gain 3 willpower points. Once that happens, the well gets flipped over to the dark side and it can't be used again that day, but each day the wells will refresh. Okay, I wanted to stop real quick again and come back and talk to you guys about something. So you may see, I am going to talk about combat here in a bit, and you'll see how strength and willpower works exactly. But you may see how this game is more story driven based on the cards, where the legend card will say you need to complete these objectives, and then then you'll read the next legend card. And I'll explain different things about that a little bit in a couple minutes, but I just want to say the basis of this game sort of plays in that style, where you're going to be taking the legend card and reading it. It's going to be telling you what to do, and most of the time you're only going to have a certain time frame that you have to accomplish it, which makes a real puzzle aspect come into play, where you're studying the board, trying to figure out, okay, well, if you spend 4 hours to get here, you can go to the merchant. I'll spend some hours and get to the fog. You can move through here, and then you end on the castle, and we can accomplish all that in the time that we have. And you'll see that, and I'll talk about that a little bit more coming up in the this episode. So just want to stop and say that there is a big puzzle aspect to the game, and I'll even give you some more thoughts on that a little bit later on. Okay, so now we've accomplished the first part, and you'll see basically a little bit more of what the game will look like on future setups, where the tokens for the fog have been replaced with real fog tokens, and the wells have also been replaced with well tokens, and there's 4 spots for them on the board, as so, and there are the merchant icons on spaces that we just talked about. Okay, so we're back talking about this sunrise box. The bottom part of the sunrise box tells you the order at a new day that you're going to do all your tasks. Alright, from left to right, you're going to resolve all these things in that order. And the first thing that you're going to do every morning is draw an event card. Now this card here that you see on top is a special card that's again only used in the first introductory legend, and the one with the green arrows is always going to be the first card you draw, and you'll really never use that card again. Taking a quick look at the back side of that event card, it gives a little flavor text, and then it tells us what to do. In this case, gores are going to be spawning, and it tells you which spaces on the board to put them out. Here are all the baddies that you're going to be using throughout the game. They're cardboard standouts just like the characters, but they're really good quality, and they have Michael's artwork on them, which are fantastic. There's a couple different types, and then you can see these guys are your basic gores right here, and we're going to be putting 4 of them out on the board. Alright, so we've got our gores set out. And guess what? We are going to be going back up to this sunrise box, because now that we did the event card, you're going to notice that the next step of the sunrise box has pictures of the creatures. You're going to be moving the creatures in the order that they're shown on the sunrise box, starting with the tiny gores. Of course, there's none of the other creatures out on the board right now, so you're not going to have to worry about them at all. Let's take a quick look at creature movement. Every space on the board has numbers on it and little white arrows. The numbers are used for lots of different things. The white arrows are only used for creature movement. When you start the creature movement, it's pretty simple that you're going to basically just go from space 1 and go to the lowest number creature, which at this point is creature in space 16, and they move 1 space following the white arrows. So this creature here would move from 16 to 13. You would continue on and you would see that the next lowest number creature is in space 22, and he would move to space 19. Next would be creature in space 23, but his arrow also has him move into space 19. Only 1 creature can occupy a space at the same time. So if that ever happens, the creature then immediately continues moving to the next space up, and in this case, he would end his movement on space number 3. Now the next thing you would do during the course of the day, after moving all the monsters, is refresh any wells. As I showed you before, if a well token is used, it gets flipped to its gray side, so every day they get refreshed and they can be landed on for willpower again. Then the final thing you're going to do is move that white pawn, which I showed you earlier, the legend marker, and let's take a little bit closer look at the legend track again. Alright, so here's that legend track I showed you guys earlier. And now you're going to see that there's these red tokens that are set out on the legend track. Now what this corresponds is, remember all the letters, how the legend cards had letters on them? These tokens are going to be placed on the letters for every one of the legend cards that you have in this particular quest. What happens is, every time that you move the legend marker onto a space with one of the red tokens, it's going to signify that you're going to draw that letter legend card and read it. So in this case, the last thing we do in the morning, is move the legend marker 1 space, which is going to move him onto space B, thus drawing the B card from the legend deck. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to go as showing you exactly what is said and what comes out in the order on the legend cards. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who may be interested in picking this game up. I do want to say I am going to explain combat in a second, but as far as the rule booklet goes, that is it. I have explained to you everything up to this point that is listed in the rule book. You're probably going to be asking more questions. How does this work? You're going to be looking at other components that come with the game, which I'll show you a little bit later, and wondering how they work with the game. You really just don't want to worry about any of that. Just focus on the legend that you're on right now and the rules that you're playing with and things, how they work. A lot of the rules to the rest of the game, well, first of all, they are going to be in that reference, little reference sheet that I showed you. So you can always look in there, and if you say, well, how does fog work again, or whatever, you don't need to bring out those little tokens that have the rules on them. You can look in this reference book and explain to you how the fog works and the wells work and the merchants work and things of that nature. So if you forget, there is a reference point to go back instead of having to pull out the tokens. And a lot of the rules are on those legend cards. And again, once you use them, you can always go back into that booklet and find out. Now when it comes to combat, there's actually a combat card, which I'll show you here in a second, that explains how combat works. So the first time you go into combat, there are no rules in the Quick Start rule booklet. You have to read this combat cardboard kind of large tile. And so let's take a look at that. Okay, so here's the card that explains battle sequence. It gives you a little rule at the top of how a hero does 3 actions on his turn: move, fight, or wait. We've already talked about movement and waiting. Fighting works the same way. Every time you fight on your turn, you're going to move your timer 1 hour on the timer track. If you don't win in a battle, you can keep fighting, and every round of battle is another hour that you have to move your track. Now, there's also down here, it kind of shows you the start, how the battle works and wraps around. So first the hero attacks, then the creature attacks, then you'll combine the battle value, and then it's the end of the round. Alright, and it tells you when battle will end, or if the hero wants to just keep continuing. So let's take a look at the creature combat section of the board. At the bottom of the board, you'll see this creature sort of combat area, and it'll show you each creature here, the different types of creatures in the game, and what type of strength they have. So depending on which type you're fighting, you'll place a cube in that box to remind you what that creature's strength is. Below that, it shows you how much gold and how much willpower you earn for defeating that creature. Then below that is the creature's willpower. Now, I haven't really mentioned this before, but I have to say that willpower is used for a couple of different things, but you have to almost think of willpower as your hit points. And as I show you how that works on the character card in a second, it'll make more sense. But you can see for each creature, it shows you the different starting points of their willpower. So, example, the smaller gores start with 4 willpower points, essentially 4 hit points. Okay, so going back and looking at the character cards, remember you had a strength and a willpower. And as I just said, your willpower is essentially like your hit points. So if you ever get down to 0 willpower points, well, you are out of commission, dead, whatever you want to call it. During combat, you're going to be rolling dice and comparing them to the creature's combat dice. However, you're only going to be taking the highest die roll and then adding your strength to it, and that's going to give you your combat value. As you can see, the willpower track here, how there's 3 different rows. Depending on where your willpower points are, it's going to determine how many die you get to roll, or dice you get to roll. So for example, you start with 7, you're going to be rolling 3 dice. So you'll roll the 3 dice, you'll take the highest number, and then add your strength to it. So that's where going to the merchant and buying strength points comes in handy. So if you're rolling 3 dice, and you roll a 5, starting, you're only going to add a 1, so your combat value is going to be 6. But as your strength gets higher, it's going to make your combat value even higher. Okay, so we talked about each character having its own special ability, and I'll talk about the wizard right now because his pertains to combat. As you can see, the wizard only has 1 die here listed, so no matter where his willpower is at, he's only going to be, or she, is only going to be rolling 1 die. However, the wizard's special ability is that after the die is rolled, he may flip it to its opposite side. So in that instance, the wizard is actually never going to be rolling less than a 4. Based on where the creature's willpower is, that will also show you how many dice that they will be rolling during combat and adding their strength to. Okay, so based on this combat result, you would see that Thorn has his highest die is a 5, so he would take 5 and add his strength, which would be 8. So 8 gives him his combat value. Then the creature had rolled a 4 and a 2, so he takes the 4, adds it to his 2, which is 6. The difference would be subtracted from the willpower points of whoever won. So in this instance, the gore would actually lose 2 willpower points. Of course, he would still be alive, and you would have to spend another hour in combat with him. A crazy thing about the creatures is they always have the ability, if they roll doubles on any 2 dice that they have rolled, those 2 dice are combined together. So in this instance, it would be 8 plus 2, which is 10, to Thorn's 8, and he would end up losing 2 willpower points. Okay, so that really is how simple combat works in the game. Another aspect of combat in this game is that every time you kill one of the creatures, you will move the legend marker up on the legend track. Now that we're at that point, I want to discuss something right here. Part of this game, some of the love it or hate it things that I've been reading about on the internet and Board Game Geek, is that you cannot focus completely on combat in this game. It is not a run and gun. If you're really looking for that style of game where you can just kill everything that's coming out on the board, then I would suggest, maybe certain other games like Defenders of the Realm does that well, or the Dungeons and Dragons cooperative games. However, in this game, it's all about your objectives and completing them in a set number of time. So if you're wasting all your time just killing creatures and not focusing on your other objectives, you're going to run out of time and things aren't going to get accomplished. That being said, one of the main things you have to do is stop the creatures from invading the castle. So at the same time that you are trying to stop the creatures from invading the castle, there's always another objective that's going on at the same time. So thematically, it may not make sense that you have to not kill certain creatures and you have to kind of pick and choose which ones you're going to kill, but I think it does make a lot of sense that way, because if your main objective is, let's say, to deliver a message somewhere, or actually I'm not even going to give any more away, but you're not going to just run out and go, you know what, we are supposed to be doing object B, but instead we're just going to sit around and defeat creatures all day and beef ourselves up. Now I understand that one of the main mechanics is that you are beefing yourself up in combat, and why would you be beefing yourself up so much if it's not about fighting? Well, it is about fighting, but it's about fighting quickly. So if you are beefing yourself up and you're increasing your willpower to roll more dice and you're increasing your strength points, in the scenario you just saw, I wasn't strong enough to kill the creature in my first round of combat, so I'm spending more time now fighting the creature in combat. As long as you're beefing yourself up, then you're going to have a lot stronger strength, and it's going to be easier to kill that creature with only wasting an hour out of your day. Now there's also rules that come up in the game for fighting together. If 2 people or 3 people or even all 4 of you are in the same space as a creature, you can all 4 spend 1 hour and fight together, where you're adding all of your combat together and subtracting it from the creature's combat value. It's a real easy way to just, especially the harder creatures, to just get in there, boom, take a nice big shot at the thing and take it out, and everyone only spends an hour. So just keep that in mind, that this game isn't going to be all about combat. It's going to be more about picking and choosing and completing your objectives on time. There's a lot to this game still that I didn't show you. For example, the Warriors, his special ability is he gets 5 willpower points at a well. And I did mention that the Dwarf can go to his special merchant and he can beef up his strength for only 1 point. Let me just show you some other of the components that are in the game, but I don't know, even for myself, for certain, exactly how they're all used, because I haven't played through all of the legends yet. So I will show you some of the components, and I can't really explain how they work, but you'll get a sense of what's going to be coming up after the first legend, and a little bit more feel of how the game's going to play out. These are the event cards that you'll be using during the course of the game after Legend 1. Legend 1 has its own set of event cards. These are what you'll be drawing every morning. I'll show you a few examples of some event cards. For instance, here's one here where the monsters pollute a well, so you have to remove one of the wells from the game. Here is a Dwarven Trader that shows up, and you can actually buy items from him for willpower points instead of money. Except for the Witch's Brew, but what is that? Show you in a second. And here's one more example here where the monsters grow stronger, and for the remainder of that day all the monsters have 1 more strength point. So I showed you earlier how there are inventory slots on the character cards, and you can see here that you'll eventually be able to equip your character with a shield and a bow. You can get a familiar. There's also helms, and the merchant is going to open up, and there's going to be more things that you're able to purchase from him. There are plenty of other items that are also going to be used during the course of the different legends. Here are a couple of tokens for the witch, as well as some allies that you'll be able to join up with. Here are a few more of the baddies tokens that are going to be coming out in the course of the game. And of course, there's always the biggest and baddest. and that is the dragon. Oh, okay, I just want to give you a quick look at a few of the other components that are in the game. But again, this isn't everything, but it's just about. There are some dice that the heroes are going to be to beef themselves up with, as well as some of the monsters we'll be using. There's also a deck of fate cards. We have a little cardboard tower here that's going to be coming out on the board. There's also a secret lake on the other side of the map, and that has its own set of cards as well. There's going to be farmers. The farmers actually, when you rescue them, they can help protect your castle. There's, of course, gems, and then there's some other monster tokens that the monsters will be using. Okay, so who is going to like Legends of Andor? Well, I do, first of all. I really like it, to be honest with you. I've only played the first 2 Legends. I played the first Legend over a couple of times, played with new players, so that's really the one that I suggest starting with if you have a new group. It can be a little solvable, especially as you keep replaying some of the Legends, but I don't have that a problem if I play with a new group of people. I just sort of back up and let them kind of do their own thing, do or die. If I know they're doing something wrong, I really don't even try to correct them. I just kind of let them go through and have their own experience with the game, and I just play more of a rules buffer, and I do what I can to help win as well, of course. Now, I've heard as you get farther, some of the scenarios have a lot more randomness to them as far as what comes out. The event cards can also add a lot of different randomness. They can either make the creatures more harder to fight, or they can buff up the heroes, making things easier, so that's a way that the game can change up a little bit. There's only 5 Legends that come with the game right now. There is a 6th Legend that's completely blank that they encourage you to make up your own. There's also another one on Boardgame Geek, a small little few card Legend, but it's not in English right now. Hopefully they will put that out in English if someone can translate. Maybe you can go over there and do that. And there's also a couple homebrewed Legends over there, but again, no one from America, or no one has put any out that are in English and uploaded them to Boardgame Geek yet. But I am looking forward to that aspect of the game of creating your own Legends and stories. I think it sounds like a lot of fun. Now, people who aren't going to enjoy this game are firstly going to be the ones that really just want combat heavy, and they're not going to like that puzzle aspect of how you're trying to figure out what to do and pick and choose your battles. If you're really looking for a combat heavy game, this probably isn't the one for you. This is a story driven game. If that's more your thing, if you're more interested to find out what's coming next, from Legend 1 to 5, it is a progression in the story, and as you're flipping those cards over, it has really incredible flavor text. All of the event cards have flavor text on them, so it really is developing the story that's happening across the land, is really just kind of developing and evolving itself as you progress through the game. Quickly mentioning the rules. I even myself did get a little kind of frustrated the first time I tried to play this game with the rules, but I think it was more my fault. I was kind of looking ahead. I wanted to know how things work before I should have known about how things work. So I was frustrated trying to figure out how exactly does combat work, and I was constantly flipping through the quick start rules, and then there's a few times I was looking in the other book and I was just missing things because if I just missed one line that I wasn't understanding how it works. So I really encourage you to go in knowing that you're not going to learn how to play this game the first time you play it. You're going to slowly be introduced to the rule systems. Follow it step by step from that quick start rules. Make sure you do not miss a line. If you miss a line that says, now go read Legend Card B, then you're going to be confused. There's a line at the very last card of Legend 1 that tells you, okay, now that you beat Legend 1, go look at, there is a card that is just for the game setup for every Legend after Legend 1. Make sure you don't miss that because you're not going to know how to set up Legend 2. So if you buy the game and you go, let's just start with Legend 2, which is perfectly fine, I guess, you're not going to know many of the rules, and you're probably not going to know to go find that Legend 2 card. So, do you need someone that's played it before the first time you played? I don't think so. I think it is it's so unique in the way they teach you the rules, but you just really have to be strict with yourself and your group the first time you play it to follow along with the rule system, how they're written and how the game's meant to be played. I have looked around. I'm assuming they're going to put more Legends out for this game. I don't know for certain yet. I have been on Fantasy Flight's website. I've been on Board Game Geek, and there's really nothing positive. I guess it could depend possibly on the sale of the game and how well it goes over. But I would assume that it would not be difficult whatsoever, kind of in the whole Mansions of Madness style of Fantasy Flight, where they just put out maybe just another deck of legend cards with a few extra maybe tokens or rule systems or things like that. It would not be that difficult whatsoever. Or even print and play legends would not be something that would be very hard to do for them. So hopefully there will be adding that, and it will keep the replay value going. But personally, as for myself, if I play a game 10 times, that's pretty good. So if I play each one of the legends 5 times, then I usually get my money's worth out of the game. I said I compare it to Defenders of the Realm, and I probably haven't played that game 10 times, and I love that game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So to say a game has replay value, I'm not going to play the game 50 times anyway. So there's not many games that I have that I think I could play 50 times, that aren't going to feel samey afterwards. Okay, so that's it for this episode. I hope I showed you guys enough to get a feel for what this game really is. I know there's not a lot out there. You're kind of going in blind most of the time, so hopefully this will help you out in that matter, and now you can decide if it's something that you'd be interested in. I really highly recommend it. So go out, check out, pick it up, find somewhere that has it, go play it at a convention. Legends of Andor.